Hello, how are you doing today? I hope you're having a wonderful day. Now, if you are in your home buying journey, I'm sure that you're super excited about finding the right property, finding the right home, but you want to make sure that you consider all the legal and practical aspects of the home buying process. Now, one crucial step in this can be a land survey. Now, make sure you stick around to the end of the video today because we're breaking down what a survey is, why you need it, and how it can save you a massive headache, and when it's a must-have in your home buying journey. So let's get started. So imagine that you've had the opportunity to buy your dream home, but only to find out later that part of your neighbor's fence is actually on your property, or even worse, that your home is right across a property line and you don't even own the land that half the house is in. Super awkward. Now that's where a survey comes in. A property survey is a detailed map that shows the boundary of the land, any structures on it, so if you got a garage or a barn or that fence, and it also sometimes will mark where utilities are, if they're underground or above ground, if you have any easements or encroachments, and actually marking the land with stakes. So you can not only have the piece of paper that has the dimensions and where everything is, so you can look at it kind of overhead, but also to be able to physically walk the property and find those stakes so you know where to put the fence. So it's kind of like a fact checker for your property lines, and without it, you might not know what you're really buying or building on. Now, the point of the actual survey is so you can have it in your hand and figure out where everything is. But there's a lot of research that goes into it to get that far. Now, why would you want to get a land survey? We talked about that a little bit about what it is, but when would you want to get a survey? Of course, the first things to think about when you're buying a property, before you buy it, you want to get a survey. It's highly recommended. It is not required. But it helps you understand that you're actually buying what has been advertised or what's been told you, and also the amount of acreage that's more or not less than what's been advertised or told to you. Now, if you've got the land already and you're about to build on it, you may want to get a survey if you haven't already to make sure that you're actually placing the structure in the correct location on the land. And even if you're doing an addition to an existing building or making some renovations, a survey is crucial so you ensure you're not making that addition onto someone else's property. Now, if you're not doing something so major as building or adding on, even putting the fence in, if you're planning to install that fence, you want to make sure that you have the survey so you have the proper location and there's not any disputes later. Now, when you get later, if you get like a lot that you're just building a fence on, like a city lot, it's important because even though you think you know the property line, like let's say your neighbor has a fence up and you're just going to add on to that, well, that if everybody's okay with that, that's fine. But actually, a lot of city lots have setbacks, and you're actually supposed to be like 15, 25, whatever feet back from the actual property line, so you really shouldn't be adjoining to your neighbors. Now, even when you're going to sell property, you may want to get a survey so that you can give your buyer an understanding of what they're actually buying. Now, of course, if it gets to the point where you didn't do the survey up front, you're probably going to need one if you get into a legal dispute, so you can prove that you own the land that somebody else thinks they have, or if they build a structure on your land to prove, hey, I'm sorry, but you put it on my land, I guess it's mine now. So those would be some reasons why you want to get a survey. So I mentioned the basics of a survey is they draw it out and they mark the land, but they also have to do several things to get that far. First, they have to actually go and physically measure the property. They have to have a starting point and then measure from there to figure out where the property starts, and then actually measure out the property lines. So where do they find this information? They have to start by researching the property records. There may be a survey on file. What makes this very difficult in Arkansas is it's not required that you file your survey or record it at the county or the state. So that can sometimes get confusing if someone says, well, I have a survey, but I don't have a copy. So it can be hard to find it. And plus the other part of that, you would think it would be under the legal description of the property. No, it's under the owner's name. So if it was 10 owners ago, how would you know that whose name the survey was under? So that can be a little bit difficult. But they do research those documents. They can also look at a deed. A deed will give you the legal description, which like if it's just a city lot, that's not going to be helpful because they'd have to go back to the city plats and the subdivision plats. But if it's an actual deed, like 20 acres, then it's going to say you start here, you go this many feet, and then you turn this direction. So it does actually get really specific. So you can kind of draw a picture right from a deed if you know what you're doing. Now they're also going to be looking at that deed and maybe that subdivision plat or any other information that they find to identify easements and encroachments, and determining if those easements are actually deeded on your property, like you're giving someone an easement or someone's giving you an easement, would be important for them to identify on the survey. Now the difference between an easement and an encroachment, like for example, I have 20 acres that doesn't have access to a road. So they have to get an easement across somebody else's property. Basically, it's a driveway across somebody else's property so you can get to the land that you own. That's an easement, either way. Now, encroachment would be like how I mentioned that in a building, when they built a building and they didn't get the survey done, and so the building crosses the line. But those owners at that time said, that's okay. You can use the building, that's your building. I understand it would cross my line, but that's okay. That's considered an encroachment. But it's, like I said, if everybody's okay with it, it's okay at that time, but the problem comes up later down the road when one of those owners are not okay with it if the land transfers. Now, when they create that detailed map, they usually use some kind of technology, I'm sure right now, where they can actually show those boundaries, show how far it goes from one point to another, and any other relevant features like structures on the land, like where is the house and actually on the land and in location to the road and things like that. So it will identify where those easements are, and I know that some of the surveyors in our area will actually give you a like aerial view like you'd see on Google Earth with the property line outlined. So that's really nice, so you can get an overhead view versus just a piece of paper, white piece of paper with a line on it. It's kind of hard to picture that in your real life. So that's what's nice about that, if you can get that additional information from your surveyor. So do you always need a survey? The short answer is no. It is up to you if you want a survey or not. If you're buying a condo or a property in a well-defined subdivision that's already been platted out, and when they created the subdivision and they put the roads in, you may be fine without one. But if it's a larger lot, if it's a large acreage, or if there's any question about the boundaries, like maybe it was a brother and sister and so they didn't have a defined line and they just said, okay, you take that left half and I'll take this right half. A survey is a smart move when you take it out of the family. And it's also knowing about the specifics of what you're buying, and you don't want just a guessing game. I think it's 20 acres when it's actually 18 or 25. So what I've always been told though, to say the opposite of what I just said, that if you think about it, when you're buying a city lot, which in our area is usually a quarter or a third acre, maybe even half an acre. So the difference between that and being off a few inches can add up pretty quickly, where if you're talking about 20 acres out in the country, if they're a couple feet off, that's not going to be that big a deal. So there's some people will say that you should get a survey every single time. But it's still up to you whether you decide that you want to or not. It's the only time that you might have to get it is when a lender is involved, especially if you're buying vacant land and they need to make sure that they actually are financing the amount of acreage that's accurate. Now, most of the time it's going to be your decision whether you get a survey or not, and it's up to you if you really think that's important to you. But if you are getting a loan and it's a large amount of land, or the property that you're buying is the home is not so much value as the actual land, the lender may require a survey because they want to make sure that their investment is protected. And so usually a lender is not going to ask for a survey. I certainly haven't been involved with that, but I don't sell a lot of large parcels of land on a loan, so it just depends on what your lender will require. So you want to make sure that you ask them if you're getting a loan. Now, the other person that you should know about is it matters to title insurance. Title insurance is very specific. If you get a survey as part of a realty contract, as part of a transaction to purchase the land, the title insurance will protect you if there's a future discrepancy on the boundary lines. But if you don't get a survey as part of your purchase contract and have it a contingency on your purchase and say, I'm only going to buy this if I get a survey, whether whoever pays for it, then the title insurance is not going to explain that and that cover you for that, and it will actually say there's an exception for any discrepancies on boundaries. So that's something to think about, that you're waiving that every time that you make a purchase, that you didn't get a survey, that you are not going to have title insurance in the future. Now, how often does that happen? Probably not very often. but it's definitely a possibility, and that's why there's insurance for it. So just to make sure you're aware that you're not protected if you don't get a survey as part of the purchase process. If you're finding this information helpful, make sure you hit the subscribe button right now. I'm here to guide you through every step of the home buying process, and there's not just surveys, there's much more to it. Now, the other thing you're going to want to consider once you decided that you're going to get a survey is how much is that going to cost. Now, when we talk about city lots and just the subdivisions that are platted, so essentially the information is almost already there for them. Those are about $450 to $500 for a lot, and if you like have 2 or 3 next to it, you'll probably get a discount. I think 2 lots together is like $600, so maybe 3 would be $900, you know, something like that. But when it gets really pricey is when you start getting large acreage. I recently looked up how much it costs to do a survey I did a couple of years ago, and that was about 20 acres out in Ash Flat, but that was a mostly cleared property. It wasn't really thickly wooded, and that was $1150. So it's probably going to go up from there if it's a very wooded property, if it's got an easement to it, if it's harder to get to, it's farther out, if there's difficulty finding a history of the property. So it's going to depend on a lot of factors, even the size, how many acres it is, what county it is. So it's going to add up probably the more difficult it gets. But it's still giving you that peace of mind that you won't have to worry about potential disputes in the future and any disasters that you can avoid. It's going to be in solid investment in that survey. If your lender requires it, you don't have much to say about it. But one thing that you should know, in an offer in a real estate contract, you have 3 choices with the survey. The buyer can pay for it, the seller can pay for it, or you can ask the seller to split the cost with you. In my personal opinion, it depends on the transaction. Like if a seller is selling a property and they've never had a survey done, I could see how that would be a seller expense, or especially if it had an easement on it. Now, if a buyer is buying a property and they want to put a fence up, they want to build a house on it, and the buyer is wanting to do something on the property that they specifically need a survey for, then I could see that as a buyer cost. So it really depends on the situation, and that's why they may put it in the offer that you can really do it either way. And I'm sure there's another way you can negotiate it too if you wanted to do a different split. But just so you know, that's an option in the real estate contract. It is important that you choose a qualified and licensed land surveyor when you go ahead with the survey. You can certainly get recommendations from real estate agents or contractors or even other property owners who have recently got a survey. You can also, of course, check online reviews and see who is qualified to do it in your area. Now, I know that in our county, we have a designated representative for the county that happens to be Michael Pickering right now, is one of the surveyors in our area, that he can help you out either if he's not available or other surveyors in the area that could help you out. Now, make sure that you're going to check around. I always recommend this with inspectors, so I would say with surveyors too, you're going to want to check around for a couple with pricing, and not only how much it's going to cost, but how quickly that they're going to be able to get to it, because last I knew, it took 4 to 6 weeks for most surveys in the area to get to a job and get it done. And that's really going to determine the timeline on whether you're going to be able to close on a property if it is part of a purchase that you're getting the survey done. So make sure that you ask both of those questions when you're checking around on which surveyor to use. So what happens without a survey? Well, you've decided that you're going to go ahead and purchase a property without a survey. That is fine. You can get a survey at any time that you want to on a property. But the reason to get it during the purchase time period as part of the real estate contract, so you're protecting your interests, so that you can decide once you got that survey, that wasn't really what I thought it was. Same with an inspection. You can do it at any time, but doing it during the purchase process is going to give you an opportunity to decide, do I really want to make all these repairs? So if you decide to go ahead and skip the survey and later find out about boundary disputes, or you face any legal fees and disputes with neighbors, it can be difficult in selling the property. So you've got to keep that in mind, that it's not only about buying it, but selling it in the future. Not to mention, you want to build on the land, you don't actually own land, can be costly down the road, and you can even have to pay fines or take your house down that you built. So a survey is really like an insurance policy for your property boundaries. So do you need a survey when you're buying a house? No. Should you get one? Probably, but it does depend on some factors. If there's any question about the boundaries, the structures, easements, encroachments, land use, I would say you don't want to skip it. It's a small cost now that can protect you from a lot of headaches in the future. And legal fees, who wants to pay a lawyer? Have you ever had a boundary or land dispute when you purchase property? Let us know in the comments below. Now make sure to watch this video I did about inspections as other ways to protect yourself during the buying process. Thanks for watching and have a blessed day.